Thank you for staying with us. This is still Report Desk Africa on News Central Television. And of course, my name still remains Bernard Akede. If you're just joining us, like I always say, it is now time for us to sink our phalanges into the meat of the day. Now, the Nigerian Presidential Election Tribunal has adjourned its sitting to Wednesday, from that's May 17th, after an interesting day one of the tribunal on Monday, and then day two, which also took place on Tuesday. Now, the tribunal has been set up to listen to the listen to the contentions of the People's Democratic Party, that's the PDP, and its candidate, Atiku Abubakar, and of course, the candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi. Now, Atiku is demanding his declaration as the winner of the presidential elections or presidential rerun, while Peter Obi also has called for the nullification of the election that was concluded. Meanwhile, the Action Alliance, that's AA, on Monday withdrew its petition at the tribunal. Now, we'll take a quick look at some of the happenings at the tribunal in the nation's capital, Abuja, which has been covered by our Abuja Bureau Chief, talking about none other than Amadin, who is on standby and will be talking to us right after this.
The day started with its usual drama as a group of Nigerian youths converged on the venue of the tribunal proceedings. They said they are against alleged attempts to intimidate the nation's judiciary by several protesters and demanded that the tribunal be given freedom to exercise their constitutional duties.
To be threatening Supreme Court judges is what we will not permit. Appeal court judges will not be permitted. Even magistrate courts, the magistrates, they are the people who interpret the spirit and the letter of the Constitution. It is not for disgruntled people to interpret the Constitution of Nigeria.
The leader of the group expressed confidence that the tribunal will live up to the expectations of Nigerians.
Today, Peter Obi will be presenting his case, Atiku presenting his case. They all have representation in the courts. And when you are talking to the judges, you call them my lords, because you believe they are knowledgeable and they are wise. So let's respect the courts of the land and let's save our country. So for me, I'm happy that they have all come to the court.
Meanwhile, inside the tribunal, the petition of the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi was being entertained. Counsels to Obi revealed the details of the proceedings.
We, the petitioners, counsel to the petitioners, counsel to the respondents, all agreed that instead of having this matter adjourned to tomorrow, Friday, come back, adjourn, the best thing is for us to file all the applications, serve parties, and then come back Wednesday next week, the 17th, and have it adopted or argued. That way, we will save time and ensure that expeditious hearing of the petition and for the pre-trial to continue.
The Action People's Party petition was also heard, but withdrawn by the party and struck out following the withdrawal by the tribunal.
As a lawyer, I was prepared to take up this matter to the last minute of it. But things change. The brief is not mine. The brief is that of my client. If I have the instructions of my client to do otherwise, I wouldn't say no to that.
Amadin, reporting for News Central.
Well, that was the report put together by Amadin. Now, so many reactions have trailed the tribunal even before this particular date, right after the president-elect was declared in Nigeria. Now, a lot of reactions. Some people are skeptical about the whole process and indifferent, hoping or not hoping to receive any news from it. And some people have been hopeful that good news and positive outcome will come out of it, while some are totally against it. Well, joining us to discuss this now is a person who put together that report, Amadin. Thank you so much, Amadin, for being here. All right, Amadin, if you can hear me. First of all, the security was
Thank you
beefed
so
up
much,
at the
Blessing.
tribunal, making it very, very difficult to gain access. So a lot of people were in the blind regarding the day one, especially of the tribunal. So what can you tell us about the tribunal so far, especially the proceedings that went down on the first day?
Okay, as usual, if you follow, you have covered previous tribunals, I think there has been not much difference within the first 1 week of coverage. First of all, just like you said, at the beginning of this kind of events, you see a very high presence of security on ground. You see the police. In fact, the roads passing just in front of the tribunal were all barricaded by security operatives, as they did not want any interference with the proceedings. Because usually what happens is that you see different interest groups coming to the venue of the tribunal to protest, to air their grievances, their placards speaking much of exactly what they want and the message they want to pass across. But this, however, does not affect the tribunal proceedings, because the tribunal they are not allowed inside the main venue of the tribunal, so their protests can be done outside. And then within the tribunal, you see the councils, you see all stakeholders who are interested in the case. They are always present, especially those whose parties have a hearing. As of Monday the 8th, it was actually a pre-hearing that started. The pre-hearing proceedings is meant to take exactly 14 days before the hearing proper. It is during this time of the pre-hearing proceedings that applications are filed, documents are exchanged, questions that comes with applications are answered, processes are also entertained. So within these how many days, the councils of all the stakeholders, they will have an opportunity to sit together, exchange documents. That was exactly what transpired from the first day of the tribunal proceedings. As the pre-hearing started, when the president of the tribunal inaugurated the tribunal, he made it clear that when the tribunal starts proper, there are 5 judges who are justices of the court of appeal, and then they will entertain. But when the tribunal starts proper, they will have to alternate so that they can listen to the parties. So what happened was that after the first day, the first and the second day, then after the first adjournment, it was time for from the first day. In fact, drama started on the very first day, because we saw the Action Alliance after they came up and they informed Nigerians that they were withdrawing their petition. In fact, the national chairman of the Action Alliance spoke clearly that they were not against the results of the election, because he said that they are not against the results of the president-elect, that they were only against the electoral body, INEC, for trying to cut off their party from participating in the elections. So after the first day, when they came back, he came and said that he had been reached by stakeholders, and stakeholders from the southwest, stakeholders from the north, who had told him that, okay, we know your grouse is with the electoral body and not the ruling party that emerged victorious in the last elections. Why don't we sit down, discuss, talk over the table? So he even said that INEC had tried to reach him, and when I mean INEC, I mean our electoral body, Nigeria's electoral body, had reached him to withdraw from the tribunal. So he said that they had withdrawn their petition from the tribunal. On the third day, also the Action People's Party also came out. The council of the Action People's Party came out to say that their client had also informed them to withdraw their petition from the tribunal. And it tells you that as the days progress, parties succumbing to negotiations behind the scene, backdoor negotiations, are now trying to withdraw their petition. But we expect the major parties like the PDP and the Labour Party to take their petitions all through the end of the tribunal sitting. But as it is, two parties have withdrawn, while the Labour Party and the PDP, they themselves asked for adjournment, for a 1-week adjournment of the tribunal pre-hearing proceedings, because what they wanted was that they wanted to be able to sit down with the council from the All Progressives Party, the ruling party that had the president-elect. They wanted to sit down with the councils, discuss about the applications they had filed, exchange documents, so that when the tribunal comes proper, the proceedings will go seamlessly.
All right, Amadin, let me quickly come in here. Now, there's this part that, of course, that interests us as journalists, and it's a question that a lot of people have been talking about and asking, and that's the live broadcast of this particular tribunal session or sitting. Of course, there are some critics that are arguing that live coverage of the court proceedings could compromise the integrity and impartiality of this case. Whereas there are those who believe that this is exactly what the country needs if our judicial system wants to uphold its integrity. What do you think? Should this be broadcast live? Should journalists like you be allowed to go into the courtroom to televise this? It's not a revolution, but like they say, the revolution will be televised. To televise this sitting for everybody to see and know what exactly is happening minute by minute.
Now, Bernard, I would not like to say what I think about live coverage. I only like to tell you what has been allowed in Nigeria's judicial circles. Now, when you are talking about court proceedings, cameras are not allowed into the courts. Sometimes, if the judges think that they want cameras to go out, then they can rule that they want cameras to cover the proceedings. Now, remember I told you earlier on, there are many factors that the tribunal judges will consider. Number one, they will consider the safety of the judges. It is easy to come up and say, for the sake of national interest, the people who are handling the case, how safe will they be? Because you know how heated the elections have been. You know how heated it had been on social media. It has been like a virtual war. And now you are calling judges to preside over petitions filed by aggrieved parties. What about the safety of the judges, the safety of the family? These are things that the judges will consider, because when you talk about national interest, is it interest to satisfy a few people, or is it national interest per se? Can Nigerians follow the proceedings of the tribunal on the pages of newspaper or from the television set without it being covered live? Nigerians can, but it will be left to the judges to determine whether they will set aside whatever concerns they have and allow for live coverage of the tribunal proceedings. Right now, the People's Democratic Party filed that application. It was also supported by the Labour Party, but it is yet for the judges of the tribunal to sit down, look and ask, has there been a precedence? Do they want to set a precedence now? The 2019, when there was a tribunal sitting, was live coverage allowed? 2015, when tribunal sat, was live coverage allowed? 2011, when tribunal sat, was live coverage? These are things the judges will be considering. But, it's very, very difficult to think you can predict the outcome of that application.
All right,
I tell
Amadin,
you that no one can predict it.
Amadin, now let's move away from the live coverage and
but we are just
the press
awaiting when
involvement,
the tribunal
right?
resumes.
Amadin, if you can hear me, let's talk more about the adjournment and postponement and what we see happening or what we see not happening. Now, there are two frontline presidential candidates who are challenging, and that is the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party, challenging the announcement of Bola Tinubu as the president-elect. What is the worst that can happen? What do we see happening? In your own opinion, how do you think that things will turn out? Okay, remember, Blessing, I said that I always like to judge from history and precedents.
because I don't want to assume or try to make statements that will give people a false sense of hope. The truth about the matter is that the tribunal has started sitting. May 29th, the president-elect will be inaugurated. It's just the reality, because the tribunal will sit for a minimum of 180 days. That is 6 months. After the tribunal sitting, a ruling is made, a judgment is passed. Aggrieved parties who are not satisfied with that ruling will be permitted to go to the Supreme Court, and that will take another 180 days. 6 months. This gives you about a year. So right now, the tribunal has already started, and according to the timeline of the tribunal, first of all, the first 2 weeks is a pre-hearing phase where documents are exchanged, applications are filed, the councils get to present documents and answer questions within themselves on the happenings of what they expect. Then the tribunal begins to sit proper, and this will now take about a minimum, or rather a maximum of 6 months. But remember that beyond the tribunal, Nigeria has a political process, and the political process says that on May 29th, the acting president will be inaugurated. On June the 13th, a new parliament, the 10th National Assembly, will be sworn in. All this will happen while the tribunal is sitting. So now you talked about adjournments. Adjournments does not affect the tribunal sitting or the tribunal speed, because the adjournments are for clarity. The tribunal will have to dot every I and cross every T. Every evidence that will be submitted will have to be x-rayed forensically. Every complaint that an aggrieved party raises will have to be x-rayed forensically. Every reply that the respondents have who are defending the complaints from the aggrieved parties, the first respondent, which is Nigeria's electoral body, INEC, the second respondent, which is the president-elect, the third respondent, which is the vice president-elect, and the fourth respondent, which is the ruling party that emerged winner in the just concluded elections. So you see, it's a back and forth. It's not like the war we see on social media. It's a sitting with gentlemen, sitting of gentlemen, councils who present their facts, who are given the opportunity to defend whatever allegation or whatever claim anybody has made, using law reports and history, what has already been established. So what I think is that the only surprise that might come from the tribunal is after the judgment of Osun State, which happened, I think, yesterday, or after the judgment of the Osun State governorship election, where the Supreme Court ruled, many of them will use this opportunity to be able to realign whatever they think they have as evidences, because the Supreme Court has ruled, and keynotes that the Supreme Court picked from the judgment of the Osun State governorship election will already make some parties know that either what they think are facts against the election or are facts for the elections might not stand the test of time.
All right, very well
So
said,
right
Amadin.
now,
Thank you
the
so much. I
adjournment-
mean, just like you said, there's little that can be changed because come the 29th of May, the president-elect will be sworn in. So all of this back and forth will still continue. It's now left for them to decide whether or not, when they find out what the result of the proceedings will be, then they decide what to do with the president-elect. Thank you once again, Amadin, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amadin. We continue to look towards you and to count on you to feed us with more information from Abuja.
Well, I think that's all about the tribunal. I mean, just like he said, it wouldn't change the fact that the president-elect will be sworn in on the 29th of May. And then if you look at track record and, you know, some stories that have happened in the past, it's usually harder to get them out once they're in, right?
Well,
So,
yes, based on experience, like you say,
Yeah.
it's usually harder to get the president-elect or anybody who's been elected into office. But then we've seen that it has happened before, right? Funny enough, the first governor who came in via a court case by, if you want to use the word, kicking out a sitting governor through a court case was Peter Obi.
Right.
And people have said he's quite a patient person. He waited for almost 2 years before he could eventually get into power, which is why we now have the states where he governed back then having their own elections on a different date from others and a few other states in Nigeria. So it's not going to be surprising to see for some people believing that if he eventually wins this case and justice takes its course, it's going to be interesting, to be honest.
It will be.
But well, again, like I said, if justice does take its course and if he gets to win the court case eventually. But one thing, just before you go on, one thing I think Amadin was trying to emphasize right there is that it's different. What's going on now in the court proceedings is completely different from what we're seeing on social media. There's a cold war going on social media, right? It's as a matter of fact, it's very heated, sometimes very, very vile, language is being used from supporters of the different parties.
Yeah.
But I think that this period should be used to understand what the court proceedings are all about. Possibly, officials from the parties should use their social media handles to educate their followers.
Yeah.
And then, of course, people who use social media should also seek proper knowledge and information to know what exactly is going on, how these proceedings will take. Like I said, a minimum of 180 days, 6 months. So nobody should expect something that would happen speedily or just, just so quickly.
Well, what I'll say is that people need to understand that there's only so much that social media can do. Yes, we can attribute it to the fact that, it made certain parties garner a lot of followers, but it can only go so far, right? At this point, it's best you understand the Constitution.
Exactly.
You know what's happening. The cold wars on social media would not change anything. Whatever the proceedings will be in court is still going to hold. And I think that, again, from what you said about Peter Obi being elected governor after someone was sitting in, a lot of people will argue that this is now against a stronger force. So, I mean, we're not saying his chances are slim, but like you said, if he comes out victorious, it will be interesting. But he should expect the full heat because, I mean, the other party will not just lie low and let him...
Definitely. I was going to say, and let's not forget that he's not the only contestant here. We also have Atiku Abubakar from the People's Democratic Party, even though we've seen that there are other parties that have been dropping out of this race. Recently, the AA also dropped out of the race, like Amadin explained. But I doubt that the PDP and the Labour Party will drop out. I mean, you can never tell. Anyway, no one can predict the future.
I mean, those have been the frontline candidates from the beginning. So it is a tough fight, and it still will be a tough fight. But of course, News Central will keep you updated on the proceedings as it unfolds. That's it. That's what we can take for the first part of the program. We'll go on a short break now, and when we come back, we'll talk about what is happening in DR Congo, the flood and landslide. Do stay with us.